engineering velocity was down 40%. Two of his best engineers had quit. And the VP he had hired, 15 years at Google, led major infrastructure, interviewed brilliantly. Board was thrilled, was doing everything right. That was the problem. He was doing everything right for Google, and it was destroying a 60-person startup. Here's what I've learned after more than 20 years of placing executives at growth stage companies. The hire that looks strongest on paper is often the highest risk hire in practice. Not because they lack skill, because skill is contextual. And the more successful someone has been in a particular context, the harder it is for them to operate in a different one. Let me take you back to that founder. Series B company, about 25 million in ARR. He needed a VP of engineering and found someone exceptional. 15 years at Google, led major infrastructure projects. Brilliant interview. The team loved him. The board loved him. Everyone agreed. And that consensus, that collective exhale, was the first warning sign nobody noticed. 3 months later, engineering velocity had dropped 40%. 6 months later, two of their best engineers had quit. By month 9, the founder was quietly looking for a replacement. What went wrong? Nothing obvious. The VP was not incompetent. He was not political. He was not lazy. He was doing exactly what had made him successful for 15 years. At Google, he had unlimited resources, massive infrastructure teams, quarters to ship features, consensus-driven decision-making at every level. That was the environment where he learned to lead. That was his operating system. So when he joined this Series B startup, he did what any disciplined leader would do. He implemented the playbook that had always worked. He built process, he required design reviews, he instituted quarterly planning cycles. All best practices at a company with 50,000 employees. All momentum killers at a company with 60 engineers trying to beat competitors to market. The founder kept thinking, this will pay off eventually. We just need to get through the transition period. But there was no transition period. The team was not adapting to a better system. They were dying under the weight of a system designed for a completely different game. And the VP could not see it. Because in his operating system, this was what excellent engineering leadership looked like. The founder finally made the change, brought in someone who had scaled startups from Series A to Series C. Someone whose playbook matched the stage they were actually at. Within 60 days, engineering velocity was back. Within 90 days, they shipped more than they had in the previous 6 months combined. Not because the new VP was more talented, because the context matched. That distinction, context over credentials, is the entire game. And almost nobody is hiring for it. Here's what is actually happening from first principles. Executives are not blank slates. They are shaped deeply, permanently shaped, by the environments where they have succeeded. Think of it like an operating system. Someone who thrived at McKinsey has an operating system built for analysis, consensus, and thoroughness. Someone who thrived at a Series A startup has an operating system built for speed, ambiguity, and invention. Neither is superior. They're optimized for different environments. And when you put the wrong operating system in the wrong environment, you get what looks like underperformance. But it is not underperformance. It is misalignment. The executive is executing perfectly for a company that is not yours. Have you ever watched a hire who seemed exceptional start to slow everything down within months? This is why. Let me give you the second pattern. A founder hires a VP of sales from Salesforce. Incredible pedigree, sold into enterprises, led teams of 200 reps. The founder is certain this person will transform their sales motion. 90 days in, the VP has built a 20-step process, implemented Salesforce with 40 custom fields, hired ops, and closed 3 deals. The founder is confused. This person is doing all the right things. Why is revenue not growing? Here is why. At Salesforce, that VP was selling $100,000 contracts with 12-month buying cycles. Inbound leads from a marketing budget larger than his founder's entire revenue. Sales engineers and solution architects supporting every deal. The entire machine was built for a specific kind of sale. This founder needed someone who could close $20,000 deals in 30 days, with minimal support, with a lean process, with velocity over perfection. Completely different muscle. And the VP kept reaching for the Salesforce playbook, because that is the playbook that made them successful. That is the context they knew how to win in. But this was not Salesforce. And the playbook that worked there was killing velocity here. This pattern hundreds of times. The Microsoft leader who cannot operate without massive infrastructure. The McKinsey alum who cannot make a decision without 3 months of analysis. The Series D executive who cannot move without consensus from 12 people. None of them are bad executives. They're all playing the wrong game. And here's the most uncomfortable part. Most founders never see it coming because the candidate looks so strong. They have pattern recognition. They have solved big problems. They interview with confidence and clarity. Every signal says this is the one, but those signals are measuring competence in a different context, not fit for your context. And by the time you understand that, you've lost 90 days. Your team is demoralized. Your board is asking questions. And you're facing the decision nobody wants to face. Cut the losses or hope it turns around. Let me tell you about a founder who avoided this entirely. Series B company needed a chief product officer. One candidate stood out immediately. 10 years at Amazon, led product for a major AWS service. Brilliant strategic thinker. On paper, it was the strongest candidate this founder had seen. But he did something most founders never do. Before he fell in love with the credentials, he mapped the context gap. At Amazon, this candidate had user research teams, data scientists on every decision, quarterly roadmap cycles, engineering teams of hundreds. At this startup, there was one product manager, limited data, weekly iteration cycles, and 30 engineers. The founder did not ask, is this person talented? He asked, will their operating system run on our infrastructure? The answer was no. Not because the Amazon candidate was not exceptional, but because their muscle memory, the reflexes built across 10 years of a specific environment, would not translate to a 60-person startup moving at startup speed. So instead of hiring the strongest resume, he hired someone who had scaled product at Series B and Series C companies. Someone whose default operating mode matched the velocity and constraints of where they actually were. This person joined and within 90 days had shipped 3 major features, restructured the product roadmap, and rebuilt the relationship between product and engineering that had been fraying for months. Different credentials, right context, completely different outcome. Here's the framework I use to avoid the context mismatch trap. Before any executive search, map your operating context with complete honesty. What is your actual velocity? Not the velocity you want, the velocity you have. How fast do decisions actually need to happen? What resources does this person actually have access to? What breaks if they import their previous playbook here? Then audit the candidate's context with equal honesty. Where did they learn to win? What resources did they have that you do not? What assumptions does their playbook make that your environment cannot support? And this is the one most founders skip. Look for evidence of successful context transitions in their past. Have they ever moved from big company to startup? Have they navigated a major shift in environment and come out the other side still winning? Can they name something specific they had to unlearn? The ones who cannot answer that question have not actually adapted. They've simply been in environments that already matched their operating system. Test for adaptability in the interview itself. Give them a real constraint from your company, a real limitation, a real trade-off, a real decision you faced last month. Watch what they reach for. Are they pulling from a playbook built for a different environment? Or are they thinking from first principles about your specific reality? The answer would tell you more than any reference check. Ask back-channel references about context, not quality, not was this person good. Ask what resources did they have that we do not. Ask what would change about their effectiveness in a leaner, faster environment. Ask what did they struggle with when constraints were tightened. You'll learn more from those questions than from anything on their resume. Here's what I want you to carry out of this. The strongest candidate on paper is often the highest risk hire in practice, because the credentials that made them exceptional somewhere else were built for somewhere else. And you cannot transplant an operating system and expect it to run the same way on different infrastructure. This does not mean you cannot hire from great companies. It means you have to do the work to understand context fit, not just skill fit. Because here's the truth. The VP who's mediocre at Google might be exceptional at your Series B. And the VP who was exceptional at Google might quietly destroy your Series B. Not because one is more talented, because their operating system matches a different environment. You cannot debug the wrong operating system in 90 days. You either install the right one from the start, or you pay the price.